if we are offering prayers to God, male deity, male, the pelvis is more conical.
Yes.
So you prefer using conical kalasha.
Namaste. Welcome to Clyde Samvada, brought to you by the Hindu Temple of Scotland. Today we have with us Dr. Srihari. Dr. Srihari has a peer-reviewed paper that is published on the concept of Kalasha and its relevance in Hinduism. So this paper was published in the Oxford Center for Hindu Studies. So in today's episode, we would be getting his thoughts about the concept of Kalasha, the origins of it, how it became part of temple rituals, and what is its place in today's world. So that's what today we will be wanting to talk about. So Dr. Srihari, can you start by talking to us about the origins of Kalasha?
Namaste, Dr. Srivas. It's lovely to see you, and I've been listening to your podcasts on the Samvada, and it's absolutely amazing the knowledge that you're sharing with the widening audience. So, Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. It's a very beautiful question that you asked today, Kalasha. If I could tell you what was the reason for me to study the Kalasha before talking about my understanding and my paper, it was actually a very interesting journey. I have always been brought up, every temple I visited, every puja that I've witnessed, and every puja that I conducted, there was always a Kalasha.
Okay.
And then in 2022, I was doing a cycle tour of Andhra Pradesh.
Okay.
And right at the very start of the cycle tour, I went to a place called Undavalli Caves.
Undavalli Caves.
So that's just in the outskirts of a city called Vijayawada.
Okay.
So
this is in Andhra or Telangana?
Andhra. And it is a cave temple.
Okay.
And the deity who's offered prayers to in that cave temple is Vishnu in his Sayana form.
Okay. Anantashayana. Okay.
Anantashayana. It was a beautiful experience. Okay. I saw lots of things, but there was one thing that was missing in there.
Okay.
I did not see a Kalasha there.
Interesting.
It was very interesting, and I asked myself, why is there no Kalasha in here?
Okay.
And then I started. When you go to a temple, we always offer prayers, but we also look at the art and architecture and the motifs.
Yeah.
And it was I did not find it. Maybe I did not look for it well, but I did not find it.
Okay.
So then I started wondering why a temple did not have a Kalasha there.
Okay.
And interestingly, I realized there's another type of temple called the Yogini temples who usually do not find the Kalasha and the Gopuram on top.
Okay.
But that's a discussion for a later date. So that was the question.
Okay.
Which led me to study the origins of the Kalasha.
Interesting.
So Kalasha, we know that there was a great war between the gods and the demons. Okay. And the great ocean was churned. And when the great ocean, when the great ocean was churned, the Kalasha came out of it. And the Kalasha had the nectar.
Yes.
And there was nectar overflowing from it.
Yes.
So since that day onwards in Hinduism, Kalasha is equivalent to overflow of abundance. So that is the essence of Kalasha, the symbolism of Kalasha. It is the overflow of abundance. Okay. So that is the origin of the Kalasha. And as in Hinduism, the ancient Hinduism, as we call it, is Vedic Hinduism or Vedic tradition.
Yes.
And during the Vedic tradition, we did not have idols as worship. We worshipped to the fire,
nature,
and the fire took all our offerings to the deities as Naivedya.
Yes.
So it was yajna that was the main form of offerings.
Yeah.
And in addition to the yajna, every ritual that we've had during the ancient Vedic Hinduism, there was always Kalasha. Okay? So when we see a Kalasha today in Hinduism, when we see a fire ritual, a yajna, or homam in Hinduism, we are going back in time to the very origins of Hinduism.
Okay.
So that is the significance of Kalasha, that is the
origin
of Kalasha, and it's how Kalasha remained and continues to remain a vital, integral part of every Hindu puja.
Okay.
Very fascinating story.
Yeah. So from the sort of origin in the Samudra Mantana to its place in today's puja ritual. So have you seen like transformations in how the Kalasha has played its role within the temple architecture as well as within the puja practice itself?
Most definitely yes, and that has been the crux of the paper that I have written.
Okay.
So we were using Kalasha, and in South India, where we are from, we call this Kalasha, but it also has various other names.
Yes.
Kumbha,
Yes.
Purna Kumbha, Purna Ghata. So these are all the various names that come. But just because of the colloquial nature of the language that I use, I'm going to refer to this as a Kalasha.
Absolutely.
So we were using Kalasha in all the rituals, even before we had idols in Hinduism.
Okay.
And as you know, we're not going to go into the origins of Buddhism, but there is lots of similarities that we notice between Buddhism and between Hinduism.
Yes.
In around the 3rd century, so this is the time when Hinduism was practiced as an outdoor religion.
Okay.
It was not indoors. There was no temples. It was under a tree. Or under
nature-based worship.
tent. Exactly. Yeah. So around the 3rd century, the Buddhists wanted a place to store the relics of Gautama Buddha.
Okay.
So they designed a building, which we all know is now called stupas.
Yes.
So the stupa.
Sanchi Stupa being one of the famous.
Absolutely, yes. One of the most studied stupas in the world. Absolutely. So the Sanchi Stupa was built, and on top of the stupa, there was a structure that was placed as an art, as a relic.
Okay.
And that was the Kalasha.
Okay. So it's a dome-shaped thing, and then on top of that,
Okay. So a Kalasha was placed. So if I very quickly introduce and tell you what Kalasha is, we talked about its overflow of abundance.
Yes.
So if something is overflowing in it, there should be something in it to overflow.
Yes.
And the design of the Kalasha is that there is something overflowing, and that is the design that was put on top of the stupa. Okay. I'm not necessarily talking about the Sanchi, but Sanchi does not go far from the original prototype.
Yes.
So the material that was used to form the Kalasha was exactly the same material that was used to build the dome itself.
Okay. No. So was it metal or?
No, it was not metal. It was the same material. Okay. Probably mud and brick. I do not know what was it, but it was not metal.
Okay.
So you absolutely asked a very interesting question. It was not metal at that point.
Okay.
So that was placed on it, and more stupas came.
Okay.
Around that time, the main rulers who followed Hindu faith and tradition were the Gupta dynasty.
Yes.
And Gupta dynasty did like the concept of having the relics, and they wanted to build a place of worship to offer prayers to their Kula Devata.
Yeah.
At that time it was Narasimha and Kartikeya.
Oh, North Kartikeya. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So Narasimha and Kartikeya. Narasimha because of the valor, and Kartikeya because of the
Senapati.
progeny and dynasty, continuation of the dynasty. Okay. So that was the reason for the Gupta dynasty wanting to build a temple. So the first temples were built for Narasimha and for Kartikeya.
Okay.
And the design was pretty much guided and inspired by the stupa architecture.
Okay.
And since that time onwards, we've been making improvements to the structure and design.
Okay.
And then the Kalasha came on top of the temple.
Yes.
And for Hindus, Kalasha is a very, very integral part of the puja.
Yes.
So that's when we started offering pujas to the Kalasha on top of the temple.
Okay.
We all hear words like Kumbhabhisheka. There is an absolutely amazing event that is coming up on the 22nd of January when we'll be performing Kumbhabhisheka at Ayodhya.
Yeah.
So when we're seeing all this, we are looking back at tradition that goes back to the very origins of Hinduism.
Yes. And so when you talk about Kumbhabhisheka as a thing, what essentially do we do in a Kumbhabhisheka? And if I remember, like when I see a lot of the current temples, what we see on top is a metal form of the Kalasha. So any thoughts on when did it kind of transform from what you said as mud-based potential Kalashas to this metal-based Kalashas?
So I could not answer that very question, but what made the transformation. But in my journey to understand that, I got to learn some very interesting factoids.
Okay.
So, if I could start with how Kalasha is built.
Okay.
There's lots of science and theory that has been built into the Kalasha.
Okay.
But essentially, Kalasha is a pot.
Kalasha is a pot. Yes.
Kalasha is a pot. So, say what we have here is a pot.
Okay.
And into the pot goes lots of dravyas, the materials which we use for puja.
Yes.
And there's water because something has to flow out.
Yes.
That's the water.
Yes.
And then we invite various rivers and the deities into the water and then offer prayers to it. And then place leaves. Different traditions place different leaves, but essentially they're leaves.
Yes.
Place leaves and then place a coconut on it and a coconut that has a tuft.
Okay.
And when you place the coconut and the leaves dip in, the water flows out.
Okay.
Flow of abundance.
Yes.
That is essentially what's happening.
Yes.
So that is essentially how we built the Kalasha.
Okay.
And then the symbolism of it is in Hinduism we have gods and goddesses.
Yes.
And if we are offering prayers to a god, male deity, male, the pelvis is more conical.
Yes.
So you prefer using conical kalashas.
Okay.
And if we are offering prayers to a deity, Mata, then we tend to use a rounded pelvis because the women have rounded
different shapes
pelvis.
of the Kalasha.
Yes.
Okay.
So that is the reason. So when you go into the Kalasha shop next time to buy, that what you're
Look
looking
for
at is what is the purpose.
Okay.
If the purpose is to offer prayers to a god, conical. If you want to offer prayers to the Mata, the mother, it is more circular.
Okay. Interesting.
So we talked about the coconut.
Yes.
The symbolism is the coconut is the face
and
the tuft is the hair. That is the symbolism.
Okay.
And then you offer prayers. So you're essentially inviting the very personification of God into the Kalasha and then you're offering prayers. So if you have a Kalasha, then that's why we never had idols. We've never had idols because
the Kalasha was invoked as the deity.
Absolutely. And it is very easily transportable, very eco-friendly.
Yeah.
There's absolutely nothing in there that would go waste and you can reuse them.
Yeah.
So that's how it was.
Interesting.
And then you also go and watch different people offering prayers and you find some beautiful designs that get made on the Kalasha. I always thought that they were designs, right? It looks beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Very interesting. The symbolism is they are considered as the neural network of nerves that pretty much symbolize our very essence that we're totally connected with our nerves and the intertwining and this is all to do with the nerves.
Okay.
So, and then you can do all sorts of decorations to it. It can be as simple as nothing other than the pot, water, leaves, and coconut, or it could be the most elaborate thing in the world. That's all expression of art. But the minute you set the kalasha and place it and offer the prayers, it does not matter whether it is the simplest kalasha in the world or it is the most expensive kalasha in the world. The faith that people look at it is exactly the same.
Absolutely.
Isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you think about this kalasha, which is now used in the ritual side of things, and you think about what's there on top of the temples, they are slightly different in their form, right? So that has more of a sharper end to it and things like that. So can you kind of maybe compare, contrast as to that and this, and maybe think about Kumbhabhisheka, that's a ritual that we do to that.
Srivas, thank you very much. One of my skills is I digress.
Okay.
I did hear your question about Kumbhabhisheka and I took you somewhere else. So let's refocus. Kumbhabhisheka. So Kumbha, we talked, is another name for pot.
Yes.
Abhisheka is the ritual of pouring water.
Yes.
So there is Kumbhabhisheka and there is Kumbha Sthapana.
Sthapana as an installation. Abhisheka as in pouring.
So what normally happens is people come in, they bring the kalasha, and then the kalasha is placed on top of the gopura or the mantapa, depending on what terminology you use, or the garbhagriha. And then there is a ritual that follows where you instill life into it, you invoke the cosmic energy into it. And the process of invoking cosmic energy into the kalasha is what we call Kumbhabhisheka. And so that is the difference between the Kumbhasthapana and the Kumbhabhisheka. And it is after the Kumbhabhisheka that we know that life has come into that, and through that it is coming down into the Murti, and then is blessing us all. So that is the belief that we have.
So just for the audience who might not be familiar with seeing this on temples, so there is a kalasha which is kept literally on the top of the garbhagriha of the temple, and that's what Srihari is now referring to as where the cosmic energy is invoked, and then the power from there gets transformed to the Murti, which is within the garbhagriha or the main sanctum sanctorium of the Lord.
Absolutely. And we talked about the metal, and we talked about the factoids that came across in my journey to understand how the initial form of the kalasha was always made of the same material that the dome was made of, or the mantapa was made of. You look at any photos of the temples from the 4th century to the, say, 8th or 9th century, or you go to Angkor Wat, which is around the 9th century, Cambodia, or you go to Mamalapuram. It's all, you don't see metal there. You might see metal,
stone,
it's mainly stone. And then everything else that is built later, you would see the metal. The metal is often copper or brass. That is the usual thing that we come across. So I did not know what caused the transformation. But there were clues. There were clues. I'm not inferring anything. I'm only observing things, but I'm not inferring anything. But the observation is
using the right research terminology.
Absolutely. Well, it was a research paper. It was a research paper. So I'm not inferring anything, but I'm hypothesizing is, I suppose, the right word. It's very difficult to talk to a professor. You know that, don't you? So, let's start with the clue. The life cycle of a temple. Every 12 years, we perform a ritual called Kumbhabhisheka. So every 12 years, we re-energize. We pretty much redo the entire Kumbhabhisheka process. And where did that come from? Do not know. But the observation is there's always calamities. And the main way of the society was farming. It's always. And When there's a calamity, the farming gets affected.
Yes. Further out or something.
Flood destroys the crops.
Yes.
The seeds disappear.
Yes.
So you lose seeds.
Seeds.
So you can't grow
Next.
for the next season. Then you need to have a plan. And I believe what people used to do was very fascinating. They would collect the seeds, put them in the kalasha, and put them on top of the temple.
So there's a seed bank.
It's a seed bank,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
And then every 12 years, they would change the seeds.
Okay. Oh, okay. So the 12-year cycle is linked to the seed.
Observation.
Interesting.
That is my observation. So I'm not inferring anything.
Okay.
But why are we doing this every 12 years now? Is that because there was a practice in the past? And it's a bit difficult to have a pot that opens and closes with mud and bricks. I do not know.
Okay.
So is that the reason why they changed it to metal? Because then you have a mechanism of locking and unlocking, and then putting your seeds in there.
Interesting.
I do not know, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
One plausible explanation.
One plausible explanation. So that's my observation. So these are the two factoids that made me think, is that the reason why we have 12 as a significance number?
Okay.
Maybe it is, maybe it is not, but I'd like to think that that is what it is, based on my studies.
Interesting.
But equally, there's also theories that come around saying that the reason, you talked about the pointy thing at the top, there are theories that came about saying that is because it is a lightning strike absorber.
Yes.
I looked into that as well.
Okay.
And there is nothing to say that that is the reason for it.
Okay.
But there is also, if you look at the temple complexes, they are very elaborately made, they're very lovingly made, so they're very precious. And all these temple structures, they have very elaborate processes in place to avoid damage from a lightning strike.
Okay.
But it did not come up as if the reason for that is that. It did not come. I do not know if it is or not, but it did not come as the reason. And there is also records of temple receiving a lightning strike and getting damaged despite having that on the top.
Okay.
So it's difficult to say this and what is true.
Okay.
But that answers the question about the pointy, because probably we talked about the tuft of the coconut.
Yeah.
And maybe
it might be a symbolism of that as well.
Yes. Okay. So it's the tuft of the coconut, and then they made it a bit pointier.
Okay.
And but I mean, you and I, we've performed quite a few kumbhabhisheka in this temple, and we have looked at the kumbha that goes on top in the mantapas very closely. Yeah. And there is no compartment to store seeds nowadays. Yeah. So if we are thinking that all these kalasha have compartment to store the seeds, no, there's no compartment to store the seeds that I'm aware of.
Okay.
And so we don't have seed bank up on the top of the temple.
No.
Yeah. So that is how the.
So is there any other sort of contemporary relevance to kalasha that you have come across when you studied this that you want to kind of give our thoughts on?
Good question.
Okay.
How do I take this answer? Right. So I know what is the faith. Okay. And I know what is the belief. Okay. That started the origins of the kalasha. Okay. And we went through
different phases of it.
Different phases of it, and we now know it is the single most important piece of puja. Okay. And you can perform a puja without having a murti if you have a kalasha. Okay. Yeah. If there is one group of people, in my opinion, it's again an observation, but an observation based on growing up seeing it, growing up doing it, and then watching what happens in our temple and in the society. Yeah. If there is one group of people who made sure that the kalasha has remained an integral part of Hinduism, I think that is our women.
Okay.
That is my observation.
Okay. Why do you say so?
Because we go to perform puja. Who sets up the puja? Who sets up the kalasha? It is the women of the house who sets up the puja. Okay. There is lots of vratas that our women do. It is the
Lakshmi vrata.
Yes. all these vrata, it is the women who set up the Kalasha.
Okay.
It is the women who bring out their
Devotion.
creative ideas to build the Kalasha and then make it as simple or as decorative as it is. But the whole point is approaching it lovingly to make sure that the Kalasha is built.
Yeah.
That is the essence. And I think, and then all the women, they go to each other's home and then they look at the Kalasha. Oh, I could do that, and then they improved on it. So what we're seeing today is years of knowledge exchange about what you can do to a Kalasha to make it more divine and more beautiful.
So much, Dr. Srihari, for sharing with us the origin story, the transformation through the ages and its place in the contemporary world of the concept of Kalasha and its relevance in the Hindu practice in that sense. Thank you so much. Namaskara. Look forward to hearing more of such thoughts from you in future episodes.
Thank you very much, Srivas. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you very much.